Hello, my delicious co-creators. Lilou here for part 2. Actually, right now we're going to speak with Daniel Mitel that I just met 3 weeks ago and that I really enjoyed. I did his workshop and I wanted to share with you the tools for home. So in part 1, we just did a very powerful exercise, pulsating, so that we can pulsate with the universe and all be interconnected and be in this one heart. But these tools for home are precious. Why are they so precious, Daniel? Because this is really something we can do on a daily basis.
First, the Heart Imagery workshop has a practical part, what we are doing all together. But when you go home, you might be busy. Maybe you don't have a chance to do all the exercises. So I call instruments, tools for home, what you have in your pocket, in a way that you don't schedule. You don't think I'm going today to use this or this or this. The tools for home, because you've done heart imagery, are coming in a natural way for you. And I think especially because we are in feminine energy now, after 2012, we know the planet changed to feminine energy. It's really good to have something intuitive that helps you to do and to go, especially for spiritual seekers, and not just for spiritual seekers, for all people all over the world, to have something that helps you when maybe you feel your emotional body started to pulsate too much. Maybe you feel you are too mental, too logical, and maybe you need to harmonize yourself. You might use one of these tools for home.
I really, really like the rewind, the past, and that's one of the. We spoke about this video with Daniel, and there was really this one I wanted to share with you because I just tried it a couple of times, and immediately I resonated with it, and I find it very interesting. A little bit tricky at first, maybe. Can you explain to us that beautiful tool?
Yes, the cleaning the day, or rewinding, or some people call reversing. It's one of the most ancient exercise. A lot of spiritual teachers are talking about this exercise, and I remember I was young when I was reading in one of Osho books about, he was talking, Buddha used to do this exercise with his all his students prior them to fall asleep, right? Exercise is very simple. Prior to fall asleep, when you feel you are almost ready to fall asleep, or maybe even 1 minute prior, start from the moment you are in bed, start to rewind the whole day, not from A to Z, from Z to A. You go backwards. And why it is so powerful, this exercise? Because during the day, you invest energy, you invest emotional stuff, you invest mental stuff, and you have to dissolve this energy. You have to be clean, let me put it like that. And it's very important not to do it from the morning to the moment when you are in the bed, because you reinforce, if you have, let's say, a conflict or you have an issue, you reinforce the situation. So it's very important to go backwards. Some people can really do backwards, like in the old movies of Charlie Chaplin, if you remember, when they were going backwards very fast. But some people can do the action backwards. Now, the most important thing in this exercise, when you do it, it might take 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Do not judge. Be an observer. Now, what does it mean that? Let's suppose you had a conflict at the workplace with one of your colleagues. When you see, it's like you see a screen, right? You see yourself, a form, and the colleague. You don't get involved again. You don't get upset again. You just stay very calm, relaxed, and like an observer, you rewind what happened. You see two people arguing. It's you, but it's a form. You are completely detached by the situation. When you do that, what happens inside of you, the energy starts to completely clean. And if you had a conflict, you get back the energy what was invested in that situation. Now, when you do the exercise, I just want to tell you, you might fall asleep. Usually, in the middle of the exercise, you might fall asleep. Don't worry. I give always a trick, and you can use it. If you have a chance during the day try to rewind the day, to split the day. For example, at lunchtime, take 2 minutes, close your eyes, and go back all the day since from the lunchtime morning when you woke up. Let's say you have another 2 minutes at 5 p.m., 5 in the afternoon. Take 2 minutes and go back from 5 to lunchtime. And in the evening, it's much easier. You have another 2 minutes when you go, let's say, from 10:30 p.m. in the night till 5 p.m. That might work really well.
I've noticed that even the dreams then during the night change because of that, huh?
It's a revolution inside of you, because in the moment you fall asleep and you've done all this rewinding and all this cleaning the day, you are ready, clean. All the tension what was inside of you during the day start to dissolve. So you are, it's like you are in the morning, you are fresh. You are fresh for the night time. You are fresh for dreams. You are ready to dream, ready from all perspectives. So of course it's a completely different way of dreaming, right?
How about if you start rewinding and then you remember the previous event? So can you go back and forth? How do you deal with that?
Of course, the at the beginning it will happen often. What you said now, and of course you go back and you do it. The thing is to do it, and you will skip. You will skip 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 events. Don't worry, just do it. Even if you dissolve 60 or 70% of what happened during the day, it is a big, it's a giant step for you in going clean. And even more important, when you wake up in the morning, you feel fresh and clean.
What I would really, really love to mention here, and what I find particularly interesting about that exercise and working with imagery with you this weekend, is that you can actually change the image of what happened during that day or during our past. So if there was an incident on that day, you can actually change a little bit that image and rewind with a different image, which then impacts our present.
This is one thing which is very important. And the second thing, let's suppose the incident it's going to happen again. It is not going to happen again, because something happened inside of you. When you do rewinding, let's suppose you are ready to have another conflict with the workplace or with somebody you don't like. Few seconds prior, the we can say the karmic thing is happening, the situation is happening, you see it. So you have a choice to change the energy which is going to be involved in that conflict. So yeah, it's very powerful.
I even find myself now, I mean, this workshop just happened 2 days ago, but even changing, like if I have a negative thought or something that is impacting the future and I have this negative image about what's going on, to just stop, rewind, and just replace.
Yeah.
So powerful. I mean, this is so good. Oh my God, my creators, do you realize how good this is? This is awesome. This is easy and this is practical. I love it.
We spoke in Paris. It's just an image. And believe me, you think the brain makes difference. The brain doesn't make difference. The heart makes difference. So in the moment when you change an image and you put another image in the heart, the brain automatically is listening, and you reshape your now, and you reshape your next events. So yeah, it's very powerful.
Beautiful. Shall we do another one maybe?
Yeah, I recommend a really good exercise, and it's very simple. If you had the chance to study the sacred geometry, we know all of us, we have 3 spheres of energy, and not just energy, it's also consciousness. And we know all the masters are talking about, especially the Zen master, especially Asian masters, we are talking about the first sphere, which is navel. In navel there, in the middle of the navel, there is so-called the center of being. There is a second sphere, the heart sphere. We know Dranvolo is talking about heart, and we have a beautiful movie, I recommend you, Power of the Heart, which is also related with this sphere, which is feeling, unconditional love. And obviously, we know, we saw pictures with great master and so on. The halo, the last sphere, the sphere of knowledge. The exercise is very simple. We'll do it all together. Again, I will bring you into the heart, and after that, we are going to bring prana and energy in each of these three spheres. And when you will end the exercise, what happens, you really feel like you have like a sphere of light down in the middle and up. And it is like a sort of warehouse of energy, and it's completely centered yourself. It takes probably 5 minutes. And if you have a chance during the day or in the morning when you wake up, it's good to do this exercise.
I was just wondering, when I did this exercise, that I loved, by the way, I think it's very powerful, but how big are the spheres? Our mind gets straight.
Compare with your body, it should be exactly from the edge of the wrist to the tip of middle finger, so it is 1 hand radius. However, the sphere of the head, it is a little bit bigger. It is 1 hand radius plus the distance from inside of your brain, from the skull to the middle of the brain. So the sphere of the head, it is a little bit bigger.
Okay. But the other ones are like that big inside?
Yeah, it's the other one are 1 hand radius, yes.
Wonderful, thank you.
So, we completely relax, and we are going to move into the heart again, which is a very simple exercise. We breathe in and breathe out 3 times. And again, see, sense and feel. There is a set of stairs that goes from the middle of your brain down to the middle of your chest area. And with your intention, move your consciousness, your spirit, down into your heart. Take the stairs down, past the nose level, mouth level, enter throat, go down in the middle of the chest area, step out of the stair, and there is a door on your left that goes directly into the heart. Open the door, and now step inside of the heart. Very important, remember to close the door behind you. For a moment, feel the sweetness and the beauty of the heart, energy of the heart. We breathe out just 1 time. Now I want you to move your attention behind your navel, right there in the middle, where is the center of the first sphere of your body. It's the center of being. Literally, be there. Some of you might really see, sense, and feel the kidneys behind you, and up on the right side, the liver, and up on the left side, the spleen. You might literally see, sense, and feel you are in the middle of this sphere. And now, exactly how you put water in a bottle, start to inhale and bring prana through your nostrils all the way down in the middle of the navel sphere. It's like a waterfall of light and energy. It should take 30 seconds to a minute until you will see, sense, and feel the sphere of navel. It's filled up completely with prana. Bring more and more prana there. good. And now put your attention on the second sphere, heart sphere, right there, the middle of the chest area. Feel the heart around you and the sphere. And the same way, inhale, bring prana more and more, like a waterfall that comes from up through your nostril and goes directly into the center of the heart. Again, take a minute, bring prana, life force energy there. See, sense and feel that the heart sphere is filled with prana and light. And the last sphere, move your attention right in the middle of the brain. See, sense and feel the sphere of knowledge around your head. Inhale, bring prana directly to the center of the head sphere. Take a minute. Feel the life force energy going right there in the center of the head sphere. And the whole sphere is filled with prana. And now see, sense, and feel all three spheres are filled with prana, with light. You can feel the connection between the center of each sphere. The navel, the being, the heart, the feeling, and the head, the knowledge. And let this energy to stay there in you as long as possible. Feel yourself centered and feel the connection between these three important centers. Now breathe out. Gently open your eyes. So this is another important tool for home, and again, do it when you feel it.
Thank you. Thank you. That was really beautiful.
Thank you.
Feels good. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Last little tool, the third one. We can't get enough. There's so many of them, but this is another one that was important for us to share with you today.
The last one is very simple. Just for 2 days, you don't need to choose a specific time, but try, whenever you remember, see the word gratitude, whatever you are doing. You drink water, see like golden letters, gratitude. Drink water. You, prior to start driving your car, see gratitude, start driving your car. Prior working in the laptop, see gratitude. Prior eating. You might not remember prior each action, but if you remember for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, you will feel a clear change inside of you, because gratitude, remember, it's abundance. People think abundance is coming from nowhere. It's coming from you being grateful for whatever you are doing, and you get more and more and more. Not just money, it's love, it's relationships, it's friendship, and it's peace, and it's harmony, and it's beauty. So this is the simplest thing you can do. For 2 days in a row, it's important to do it 2 days because it stays inside of you. Whenever you remember, you eat an apple, see gratitude. Eat the apple. You are doing something, see gratitude. And in the end of the day, you will see the difference.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Danielle. I'm excited. And if we want more of you, how can we? I know you have the website daniellemitel.com, but you have workshops and the books and this, so you're easy to find. Huh?
Yeah, I'm going all over the world. I'm going to teach this weekend Istanbul, next weekend in Oslo, and next one Toronto, and so on.
You travel, yeah.
Yeah, I'm blessed to meet so many people, and I'm really happy to connect and to, if it's possible, to be in service for as many people as possible.
And your book is The Now is Eternity.
This Now is Eternity, yes. I have some paper format, which I've done it by myself, so probably soon it will be in a paper format. By now you can find it in Kindle, in Amazon, in iBooks, and also in Kobo. And soon,
lots of exercise.
Yes, soon will be also in a paper format.
Thank you, Danielle. Sending you much love, my delicious co-creators, wherever you're watching this video around the world. We send you blessings and so much love from heart to heart. Big, big kisses. Bless you.